Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you for showing your interest and joining us today on our travel seminar on Daintree in Far North Queensland. I'm Caroline from Diverse Travel. So for over 20 years now, I've been designing itineraries for international and domestic visitors to Australia. So Diverse Travel is an Australia specialist company, and it's we're very passionate about Australia. And it's all very, all the regions and areas that we take clients to are all very close to our heart. Quick bit of housekeeping for our attendees. Your microphones are muted, but we do encourage questions, please. We have a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you can type in any questions there as we go, we'll get to those and get the panelists to answer those as we travel. We do have a few questions that have been presented as people signed up to the webinar, so thank you for those. Obviously now, as you've probably been hearing us chat, we've been living through some rather extraordinary times. Which has had all of us rethinking our tourism businesses and how the different requirements we're going to have when we come out the other side of this, and how we're actually going to get around our country, and when are we going to be allowed to do that? That's the biggest question that remains unanswered for everybody at the moment, and I don't think anyone can come up with an answer. We're slowly seeing a reduction of some of the restrictions in different states, but they're all at different levels, and so a bit of intrastate tourism will be the first, then some domestic tourism, and then potentially we might have a bubble with New Zealand and some of the South Pacific before we open ourselves up to the rest of the world. So I have a feeling that could be 2021 before we start seeing the rest of the world travelling down under again. And out of this, the biggest challenge will be the aviation capacity and getting that back up to the levels that we had domestically and internationally, so that we can move people around. But that's so part of what we're aiming to do is to make sure that anyone that's booking with us is completely looked after as far as deposits and cancellations, and hopefully we don't have if things go backwards again, but we will be we're here to answer questions about all those, protecting your money and your clients for anyone wanting to book tours. Now you'll see some other faces on the screen, so I'd just like to welcome our panelists today and do a quick introduction. First of all, we have Simon Mustoe, who's the founder of Wild Diaries, and he's been the key driver behind putting out the videos and the invitations to come along to these webinars. We then have Roderick Rees, who's the director of the Cairns Adventure Group. Roderick's a Queenslander, born and bred, and he will be able to share some of his experiences and information about his business and what they offer in the region. We then have Stella and Yogi, they are wildlife photographers and filmmakers up in the region, over 20 years of experience travelling around the world, photographing incredible scenery, landscapes, wildlife, and they are based out in the Atherton Tablelands and are very keen to share their secret spots of the region with clients visiting as well. So I'll just maybe start with Simon, if you want to quickly introduce yourself or a quick bit about Wild Diaries, and then we'll move around and start getting into some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I'll keep it very brief because I think most people probably know who I am from receiving relentless emails from me, some of you for a long, long time, and I'm really grateful for that, the chance to be able to connect with so many Australians and introduce people like Yogi and Stella. Some of you may have already met Yogi and Stella in stories we've done in the past. Roderick we interviewed recently as part of a series we're doing with Ecotourism Australia. So yeah, I'm grateful to be here and to be able to answer questions. But mostly, I want to hand over to the others to talk about the Daintree, because that's what we're all about. We're all about connecting people with the local operators and the people that live there to discover a bit more about the underbelly of some of these amazing locations in Australia.
Wonderful, thank you, Simon. Okay, well, let's start with Roderick. If you'd like to give us a brief rundown on the Cairns Adventure Group, and then I might get you to answer a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure, no worries. Thanks for having me, guys, and lovely to be here, and hello to everyone that's joining us. Cairns Adventure Group consists of 4 different companies. It really is about 2 rainforest companies and 2 water-based companies. So we do day and overnight trips into Cape Tribulation, something that we're really passionate about, the rainforest, and we want to provide multiple different activities through the the beautiful landscapes here in North Queensland. So we a few years ago added into our portfolio some rainforest and waterfall tours through the tablelands as well. So something different to the Daintree. And then we got whitewater rafting and river tubing tours, which make up the water side of our business. So all our tours are conducted in rainforest environments and different, sort of beautiful landscapes here in North Queensland.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. One of the questions we often get asked, and a lot of internationals particularly, but also a lot of Australians don't understand, is that it's an incredibly unique and very special region up in the Daintree, the two World Heritage areas there. Could you just explain a bit about the specialness and uniqueness of the region to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Daintree National Park and the Cape Tribulation section is probably the most famous of that, but it is a large national park. It has a rich biodiversity. Obviously, like you mentioned, the only place in the world where two World Heritage listed sites share a border, and that's really unique. Has beautiful fringing reefs that come right in onto the beach, and rainforest that fringes right onto the beach as well. So pretty unique environment. Loads of different ecological things that make it a really important place, but very, very close to Cairns as well. 2.5, 3 hours drive away makes it really accessible for people. And yeah, one of the two remaining cassowary populations moving through the area. I'll leave it there because I could go on for hours about how important the Daintree is, but it's a very unique environment, very important to the world's ecology, and something really close by for us.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you. We might come back with a couple more questions in a minute for you, Roderick, but now we'll get Stella and Yogi to introduce a little bit about their business and how they like to showcase their secret spots to clients.
We have been doing photography for more than 20 years. We've been living in far north Queensland for 17 years now, and have documented it thoroughly for mainly European magazines. So we're photojournalists, and we have done a lot of conservation work with WWF, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. But we have chosen to live here. We immigrated, me from the Philippines, and Yogi, his real name actually is Jürgen Freund. But it's Jürgen Freund's quite difficult to pronounce for some. So Yogi is the easiest way. So we've been doing magazine work and conservation work for more than 20 years. As I said, we've chosen to live in far north Queensland because it's got marine in the rainforest. So we do a lot of marine work. We do a lot of diving, Great Barrier Reef, and the wet tropics. As been mentioned, this is so unique. It's pristine. It's pristine. It's very sparsely populated, and everywhere you go is really a wow place. From where we live in the Atherton Tablelands.
And it's warm in winter.
And it's warm in winter.
Fantastic.
Sorry to the people in the south, but
having just had an Arctic blast go across the southeast corner of Australia, we could just envy you and your warmth. But thank you.
Went down to 10 degrees.
Yes. So thank you for that. Now I was checking out your website earlier, and there's a link to a calendar for the region. So talk a little bit about the different seasons up there, and is there a specific time of year that's better than others, or is it just an all year round destination?
It's all year round.
Mm-hmm. It's all year round, but
it's certainly changing, right?
Yeah.
But the wet season is great. Summer is great. It's hot.
When it's hot and humid, nature is alive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
but that's when the tourists are not here.
Yeah.
Because it's hot and humid.
Yeah. But so it's a beautiful place. Well, it's been recoined instead of wet season, they say now a green season, right? So which is probably a clever thing to see it from that point of view. And because it is really beautiful and nice and green.
Yeah.
But all the
year
other
round.
ones, like in winter, you see, like June, July, you see minke whales or humpback whales out in the Great Barrier Reef. In summer, you have, like, certainly if you're an enthusiast for insects or something like that, like little things, that would be summer.
Then the forest is alive with invertebrates.
Yeah.
And then come August, September, October, the bird life just goes berserk.
Yeah,
and
unbelievable.
We have
life.
Cranes in the thousands.
Up here in the tail.
Cirrus cranes and broilers, two Australian cranes. And they feed in the tablelands. They come from the Gulf and they come to the tablelands because it's an agricultural area. And they feed on after the corn has been harvested. The field's just full of cranes and no one here to see it.
Those cranes, there's two types,
like
in the
Olga's
tablelands.
and South cranes, yeah.
And they migrate in from Central Asia.
No,
they're within Australia. But they also appear, South cranes also exist in India, and theoretically, actually.
They were in the Philippines and they're extinct now.
Okay.
Oh.
So the habitat protection and those sort of things are very important to these species, which I guess is why there's a World Heritage listing.
No, they are actually like opportunistic because there's agricultural area here, so they come over here, but they breed in the Gulf. So yes, habitat protection over there.
Yeah.
Although the farmers don't like them.
Yes, we have that issue with the white cockatoos down south.
Yeah. But there are many places, especially roosting areas, really fascinating. And then there's kangaroos and birds, and what else do we have?
So marsupials all year round.
The crocodiles down in the
Daintree.
It's such a diversity of creatures.
And in March, April, that's when the hatchlings hatch.
Yes.
The babies hatch, and you sometimes can be lucky and go
see,
through the Daintree River and see baby crocodiles. And
just like this size.
It's the cutest.
Very, very cute.
Very cute. In those waters behind you, Caroline.
Right.
Yes.
Not quite. Not quite, but not far from
That's great. Thank you for that. So, Roderick, as a destination, do you see a drop-off during the wet season or the green season with tourism? And would you encourage, people to actually seize that as a great time of year to come to the region?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, traditionally different international markets travel at different times. And during the, like Yogi said, that people like to refer to it as the green season. I call it the wet season. It is what it is. It rains a lot and there's a spectacular beauty in that rain. So we don't hide from it at all. We think heading up on tours into the Daintree in the wet season is a unique time to see all the activity that's happening, all the, migratory birds that have come down from Papua New Guinea and throughout the South Pacific into the area to feed and roost, and the opportunity to see buff-breasted kingfishers, increased crocodile activity along the Daintree River in our touring is really great for our customers. In the past, and I hope this is the case in the future on the other side of COVID-19, that the North American tour numbers really increased through that wet season. We do a fair amount of sort of 25 to 35-year-old Europeans, and they tend to come in stronger numbers through that wet season period as well, and obviously supplemented with domestic travel over the school break, the Christmas school break. We get a lot of families coming into the area. So we think that it's a spectacular time of the year to visit North Queensland and the Daintree. And it's probably going to rain, but it's not going to be cold rain. It's going to be nice and warm.
It's going to be nice and warm rain.
It's going to be nice and warm, and we got some ponchos on the bus if you didn't bring your own. Probably a little bit ill-equipped if you didn't bring an umbrella at any time from sort of December through to April, but we got that covered for you, and we bring along some ponchos that people can wear and go out and show, like Stella said, that time up here in North Queensland where everything just explodes with life. It is, fresh shoots on all of the trees and big tidal, sweeping tidal water into the mangroves with all the rivers swelling and flash flooding through the creeks that are clearing the systems out. It's a really exciting time of year, and we think it's
and the waterfalls.
Yeah.
Yes.
pumping waterfalls.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I've just got Carol's posed a question. When we're referring to Far North Queensland, what technically, geographically, I guess, what does Far North Queensland encase? Where does it sort of begin?
Townsville is
North Queensland. Townsville is North Queensland.
and then anything north from Townsville, I suppose.
So probably from Cardwell.
Where the wet tropics starts in Paluma, right? Just north of Townsville. That's where the wet tropics starts.
Paluma
and
Range.
Then all the way up to Cooktown. So that's about 500 kilometer. That would be Far North Queensland. And then how many kilometers inland? Maybe 50 to 100 kilometer inland-ish. And that's a green area. It's a very small area, actually.
Yeah. We like to call Far North Queensland RGB, the colors red, green, and blue. Because you have the blue ocean, the Great Barrier Reef, the green wet tropics, and the Outback.
And a little bit of the Outback.
We have
Chillagoe, which is already bordering Outback.
And Undara.
Yeah, Undara.
I think a lot of people don't realise that the Outback really butts up against that region, which makes it incredibly special. And so you can see a bit of the reef, the rainforest and the Outback all in one location, which is incredibly special.
Yeah, as a crow flies, here at Atherton, which is 100 kilometers by road, is only 50 kilometers from the coast.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's a small area, and like in a radius of, let's say, 100 kilometers, you can see so many different varieties of
habitats.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll just interject, sorry, quickly, if you don't mind. That drive west is really, it's really spectacular, especially in the wet season, to see that orographic rainfall and that pressure building up on the edge of the ocean with the Great Dividing Range coming down really close to the coast. And obviously that drives the clouds up high, and there's a lot of cloud stripping that takes place in the tops of those mountains, like we were talking about before, Yogi, at Thornton's Peak. But then it dispels, 80-90% of that waterfall right there on the eastern side of that Great Dividing Range. And as soon as you drive out west, you cross over and the landscape starts to change immediately into sparse woodland and different groups of animals and different landscape, and then quickly descends into open plains and shrub land, and then into, semi-arid desert, and into what international travellers definitely would consider to be outback country, all in the space of about an hour and a half's drive.
Yeah.
So it's pretty spectacular to, do a round circuit.
Yeah. And then we can get very, very dark skies or
clear skies.
Clear skies.
Clear night skies.
Clear night skies.
Yeah. We had every now and then we go out to Chillagoe, and one time we were out there and there were like two Japanese gentlemen out there about my age, and they would come maybe every year to Chillagoe just for stargazing. And
they brought their own telescopes.
They bring their telescope.
And they would be night owls and just look at the stars and then sleep during the day. And they have been to Australia 15 times just to stargaze.
Yeah. Wow. It is so spectacular.
And to Chillagoe, probably 6 out of that 15 times.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty special. And we didn't know that until we talked to them.
Yeah.
Well, something, Caroline, can I, this is more of a question to you, but the discussions are always really interesting, because what comes out of them is obviously a lot of personal expertise and interest, but also what Stella was just saying about different styles of visitors coming. One of the things that you do, which I think best of all, is deliver experiences to people that are quite unique. So very often you've got people asking for things that the average traveller wouldn't necessarily think of asking for. But you deliver what is colloquially termed tailored tourism. You tell me what, for this particular region, what kind of opportunities are there to do things that are different?
Well, there is the wildlife, so there is a lot of the bird watching, the nocturnal tours in the evening to see some of the nocturnal animals. There's also the very strong Indigenous culture, the Kuku-Yalanji people of the rainforest, so there's opportunities to engage with them. And I know some of Roderick's tours goes to Mossman Gateway Centre, and there engages with the Kuku-Yalanji people. And then there's the special oceanography type experiences. So people can come at certain times of year to go and swim with the minke whales. You can visit some of the little islands that have got the research stations or turtle conservation rehabilitation projects out at Fitzroy Island. So it really depends on the interests of the people. There's even some great food-based tourism now in the region. And then you've got the adventure stuff. So, you know, Roderick can comment a bit on some of the adventure activities of rafting and I've heard of this river drift snorkeling and various different activities available. There's even some electric quad bikes touring, so they're nice and quiet, so you can get out to the animals up in the rainforest, up in the Cape Trib area. So, and the Outback, and you've got Mount Mulligan Station, Crystal Brook Lodge. These are Outback's properties that have opened to tourism, and they're quite spectacular in themselves. So you can combine quite a lot in the region, and then you've got, you know, I might pose this question to Roderick, you know, self-drive versus joining a tour. Roderick, would you like to comment on some of the options of differences of that?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's any surprises in what my answer would be to that being a tour operator. And, you know, you can get a great experience both ways, but I definitely swing the pendulum over to going on a tour bus. Sure, you may have to share some space with other people, whether that be in small group touring or medium-sized vehicles. But I think the reward of what you get from going with a guide who's sharing personal stories and information more than what maybe you knew before you came. And I think Simon and I touched on this when we were talking last week. The impact that can have on you personally, hearing somebody else's stories, but then learning the bits of information that they've become passionate about, that they've gone out and seen and thought, well, this is good enough to research and this is interesting and I want to share this with travellers to the region. And then giving those people on a tour bus, you get the opportunity to hear all that and touch and see and feel all the things and walk away with more than spectacular imagery, because there's lots of beautiful things in North Queensland, but I think the Daintree especially, once you start to learn about what's happening there in the environment, that's where it becomes truly amazing. It's the level of information mixed with that visually spectacular location, I think is what really leaves an impression on people.
Thank you very much for that. Now, one thing, we've got a poll here that I'm just going to switch on. So if people want to, it's just asking a question. So I'll leave this open until we've finished our webinar. But if you want to jump on and just answer the poll, that'll help us in some of our planning as well for how people's style and how they like to travel. Now, one aspect of talking to Stella earlier is that when they can put together EPhotograph books, essentially of an itinerary, which they did with Wild Diaries in Tonga with the swimming with the humpback whales. So there's an option when people are in the region to bring them along, photograph your family holiday or a small group itinerary, and then they present a beautiful ebook of your experiences, which is you can treasure. Or a physical book, yeah. So there's different ways of thinking as well, of having different people on board to help record these incredible experiences and have the benefits of a professional photographer taking some of these happy snaps as well. So there's, if you want to talk a little bit more about those options, Yogi and Stella.
Yeah, we started doing that for Wild Diaries last year, and it came out, we had quite a harrowing trip that turned out to be quite amazing at the end. You know, we overcame some adventures. Oh, there it is.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, nice.
How cool is that?
And, you know, we were able to gather all these images through 2 weeks of being there and having that opportunity of swimming with wildlife, swimming with humpback whales. And I compiled this book and put them together and had it printed in the US through a company called Blurb. And it came out so beautiful. And all our guests had a copy each. And and also an online version of it. And we've also done it for another ship, and that was a massive book that came out. It was 250 pages of beautiful imagery. So I think that's something that is pretty special, because everyone now takes pictures. And the difference between having it in your computer or having us photograph an incredible experience and putting that into a physical book and going through it and looking through, the memories just come rushing through within instantly. I don't know, Simon, you got your copy. How did you like the book when you got it?
No, it's fantastic, and I mean, one of the perhaps to be clear about this, I mean, one of the things that I think, if we can run some or start planning some tours up into far north Queensland, one of the things I'd love to do is throw Yogi and Stella into the mix for a day or two, give people the chance to meet you personally, and Caroline was saying, you would take people to a couple of your secret spots, maybe somewhere where you know where tree kangaroos hang out or something like that.
Yeah.
And those kinds of experiences can be amazing. Also, just learning how to use a camera, and I think a lot of people find perhaps photography tours to be perhaps a little bit intimidating sometimes, and they can be. But everyone's got a camera these days on their phone. I shouldn't have shown that. That's my horrible case. It's very old. But everyone's got a camera on their phone. And even being able to use that properly and being able to frame things correctly can really revolutionize your memories, as you say, of a trip. And that cuts to the heart, I think, of what we're here to talk about, really, is the fact that there's no reason why we can't help people organize or discover things that they wouldn't be able to discover themselves. And it doesn't cost more. It's just a matter of pointing people in a different direction.
Okay, so we've got a question. And now, Roderick, I think you could probably answer this one. If there's a lady that's interested in bringing small groups of women up to the region and using multiple tour operators, I mean, obviously, you know, everyone has got something different to offer. So there's an issue, is it, with tour operators coming together to, in a different itinerary?
No, I don't think so at all. You know, look, a lot of the different tour operators, the bulk of the tour is generally the same, but everybody's looking for something just a little bit different that might attract some different people. And then a lot of tours into the Daintree offer, I suppose you'd call it like choose your own adventure style parts as well, where, you know, maybe somebody's come from Darwin and seen lots of crocodiles, and so they don't want to do a crocodile cruise, and they want a little bit cheaper price, and they want to spend some time looking at the anthropology display at the Crocodile Cruise Centre and not go on the boat. Or you know, some tour groups offer the opportunity to do small additional activities once they arrive during the lunch break, when the rest of their group would go to the beach and have lunch. They can go off and do a bit of jungle surfing or do a 1-hour horse ride through the rainforest or those types of things. So there's companies are definitely willing to work together, and there's a wide variety of different touring options available that might appeal to all those different ladies coming into the area. So some have wildlife parks included in them. You know, personally, I believe I'm passionate about exposing people to that natural history of Indigenous culture, and meeting in with the Kuki LNG in the morning and doing a traditional smoking ceremony and welcome to country at the first point where you enter the Daintree National Park, I think is a really neat thing for my customers to do. Obviously, we don't have time to do that and the wildlife park, so we've made a choice that we would do this. And some people might rather go and you know, see a tree kangaroo or a crocodile or a, you know, koala, emu, etc., in a wildlife park before or instead of doing the Mossman part. So there's so many options, and I think people are more than happy to work together. And I think especially on the back end of this kind of crisis. I think small communities like the Daintree, Cairns, I think people are really going to come together even more. And you see that in the conversations we're having with operators with each other at the moment. So that should lead to more flexibility for consumers at the other end.
Okay. That's fantastic. Thank you for that. Now we've got another quick question about accommodation before we might answer before we wrap up. Just the image behind me in my screen is actually the Silky Oaks Lodge just near Mossman in the Daintree rainforest. For the person that asked that question, it's currently undergoing a multi-million-dollar refurbishment. It's becoming a member of the Luxury Lodges of Australia, and will offer a very high level. Well, it always has offered a very high level of accommodation of around about 40 rooms. Otherwise, there's a lot of smaller boutique tree houses and resorts, and not on the big scale, but on nice intimate scale throughout the whole region. There's also Airbnbs and different self-contained accommodation options. But Roderick, is there any special one that you might know of up there that you utilise at all?
Yeah, look, we use all of the accommodation providers in Cape Tribulation itself, which is in sort of probably a 3-kilometre radius. Personally, Cape Trib Beach House for me is really special. The property fronts right down onto the beach, and there's a beautiful walk just at the end of the beach, takes you up to Cape Tribulation Point called the Kulki Walk. And you can go through there and, you know, quite often see peppermint stick insects and in the pandanus, and there's a big sort of sweeping bay at the end, and it's got, you know, stingrays and barramundi swimming around. And for me, that's probably my favorite. But there's you know, there's a lot of, like I said, small boutique place ones along the way. There's bed and breakfasts up there as well, and yeah, wide variety. I think there's something for everyone, right from you know, dormitory style right through to, I would probably put Silky Oaks at the other opposite end of that. Do you think I'm right there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got pretty much everything in between, which is great. And, you know, I'm more than happy if people have questions about particular needs. I'd be more than happy to reach out to me on email, and I can shoot people in the right direction for what sort of accommodation would suit their needs.
Yeah, so I think it comes down to budget and time for a lot of people as well, and the size of the group, who they're travelling with, families, older people. The young kids, you know, so there's a lot of choice, I guess, in the region. So we have another couple of quick questions and we must wrap up, but we've got, okay, so someone missed the beginning of our talk, summarising when we think tourism in Far North Queensland will open again. There's a lot of conjecture around this. I'm up on regular webinars, but I'm hearing that it will be possibly September, probably not any earlier than that. Some of the domestic tourism may begin. Intrastate will probably start before then. So we are looking at later in the year for Caroline, who asked that question. But it's one of those things that no one can actually give us a definitive answer on. So it's a wait and see kind of thing. I don't think have you any other ideas, Roderick, on any local thoughts on that?
No, I think looking at the Northern Territory's release last week with their easing of restrictions, stamped with the Australian government stamp on the bottom, which you can assume came from the National Cabinet, would be a pretty good indication of where the rest of the states are going to follow suit. So I think you're on the money.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just quickly, could you elaborate on some of the specialist guides in the region? So if we had a special interest, you know, someone particularly interested in birds or particularly interested in the nocturnal wildlife, or something, can you know, they be incorporated into an itinerary quite easily? Roderick, do you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think those special interest sort of tours, a lot of people have those already set up. You know, there's some great tour companies that you can use that are very niche to that particular, to lots of particular desires. But we offer at Cairns Adventure Group a lot of bespoke tours. So we have a lot of groups come through who want vastly different things. We have education school groups. Late last year, we ran a group of 35 nuns from Victoria. And those two groups were like polar opposites. And then sometimes we run bucks parties. So you can imagine the different needs from those. But we present information packs to people, and with what do you specifically want to get out of your group touring for the day? This is a standard itinerary. This is our non-brochured itineraries, and then this is our bespoke options that we do. So we're pretty flexible with that sort of stuff, and we can bring in guest speakers. In the past, we've had Indigenous guides who don't work for us at the moment, but contract with us and come on the tour because a particular group might want to learn all about Aboriginal culture through the area.
Yep.
So,
I so want to hear that the nuns were the ones wanting to do the water rafting, and the kids just wanted to go for a walk in the rainforest.
We offered the rafting and the tubing, but they were no, thank you. They wanted to go to the Daintree.
What a shame.
Okay, on that happy note, I think we'll just say thank you to our panelists for joining us today. Thank you for our attendees, more importantly, for tuning in and listening. We are very keen to be working on itineraries, helping you with your planning for your trips. We can touch base with us. Simon will send out an email, so you've got a contact email address to direct inquiries through, and we can certainly answer all the questions, and hopefully be able to have people heading up to Far North Queensland sooner rather than later.
And a big thank you to everyone who jumped in and asked questions and came to listen as well. Really appreciated it.
And we are planning on doing featuring other regions of Australia in the coming weeks, and so look out for those invitations. We've got Tasmania on our list, and we may well do one just focused on the Great Barrier Reef as well, and looking at some other regions across Australia, so that when our borders are open, everyone is poised and ready to rumble and do their touring. So thanks again, Roderick, and thanks Yogi and Stella. We appreciate your time. And everyone, stay safe, stay well, and look after yourselves.